Initially, manufacturers strived for a long lifespan for their bulbs. Thomas Edison's first commercial bulb, on sale by 1881, lasted 1,500 hours. By 1924, when the Phoebus cartel was founded, manufacturers proudly advertised lifespans of up to 2,500 hours and stressed the longevity of their bulbs. More than 80 years later, Helmut Hüge, an historian from Berlin, uncovers proof of the committee's activities hidden in the internal documents of the founding members of the cartel, such as Philips in Holland, Osram in Germany, and Compagnie des Lampes in France.
The average life of lamps for general lighting service must not be guaranteed, published, or offered for another value than 1,000 hours.
Under pressure from the cartel, member companies conducted experiments to create a more fragile bulb that would conform with the new 1,000-hour rule. In 1942, the cartel was uncovered, and the U.S. government sued General Electric and other light bulb manufacturers. After 11 years of litigation, the court pronounced judgment in 1953. Amongst other things, General Electric and its associates were banned from limiting the lifespan of the light bulb. But the judgment had little effect in practice. Light bulbs continued to last 1,000 hours. In the following decades, inventors filed dozens of patents for new light bulbs, including one lasting 100,000 hours. None of them reached the general market.
No one I found lays down the truth as simply and as eloquently as Lysander Spooner. We're continuing with his Vices Are Not Crimes, a Vindication of Moral Liberty, and we are on section 12. So this one is a little bit long, but I also think that dividing these between episodes kind of throws us off because they're organized, I guess, somewhat like chapters. And so let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do this time is give you a little bit throughout this episode of the entirety of section 12. So we'll get started with this. It is a natural impossibility that a government should have a right to punish men for their vices, because it is impossible that a government should have any rights, except such as the individuals composing it had previously had as individuals. They could not delegate to a government any rights which they did not themselves possess. They could not contribute to the government any rights, except such as they themselves possessed as individuals. Today's topic is time and the illusion of time as techniques of mind control. So naturally, my first thought was to go to a classic throwback.
Marty leads an ordinary life, but Dr. Brown is about to change all that.
Are you telling me you built a time machine? Son of a DeLorean?
He's sending Marty 30 years back in time, and only Dr. Brown can help him get back to the future.
So our conception of time is based on physical, cyclical movements of objects, of bodies in the heavens. And this is heading to the topic of astrotheology and what is going to be a real look at what religion reveals. And we'll be tackling that when we get into the 12th technique of mind control, which of course is religion. So if we look back at this celestial concept of time, we have a day, which is one revolution of the Earth on its axis. We have a month, which is one completion of the moon's orbit. We have a year, one revolution of the Earth around the sun. And so we also have hour that is derived from and related to the word Horus, which is sun. We have minute, which is also related to min, and that is moon. And then second is Mercury. So all of these things have these cosmological aspects to them and derivations. So what does this correlation of time and these celestial movements do to the mind? If I were to propose an explanation that in no way connected time to these heavenly mechanics, how many people do you believe would even take that idea in for consideration as compared to those who would reject it or who would consider the topic not only uninteresting, but unimportant? So what we have is a linear-based time model that is assumed to be circular, just like a clock. It just keeps repeating itself over and over and over again. And look at the scarcity-based quantitative view of time that we have in the Western world. I don't have the time. I'm out of time. There's never enough time. And this is also materialistic. Time is money, wasted time, lost time, timekeeping. This belief system misses the intangible, spiritual quality of time, which is precisely how names of the week have been derived once we understand that the cosmos and celestial bodies were ancient man's expression of spirituality. So is time real, or is time an illusion? We have been indoctrinated to understand this experience in the context of time, but only one framework. So my question is, are there other understandings of time that are occulted or have been hidden from us? Now, nobody but a fool or an impostor pretends that he, as an individual, has a right to punish other men for their vices. But anybody and everybody have a natural right, as individuals, to punish other men for their crimes. For everybody has a natural right, not only to defend his own person and property against aggressors, but also to go to the assistance and defense of everybody else, whose person or property is invaded. The natural right of each individual to defend his own person and property against an aggressor, and to go to the assistance and defense of everyone else whose person or property is invaded, is a right without which men could not exist on the earth, and government has no rightful existence, except insofar as it embodies and is limited by this natural right of individuals. Now, something I've touched on before is that time is spiritual currency. I've talked about spending time and paying attention. The simple question is, what do we spend our time on? And the answer is extremely revealing and, of course, has a direct relationship to our conditions individually and in the aggregate. In fact, this is the ultimate example of causation and not correlation. When we spend our time looking for ways to more cleverly delegate our responsibility for ourselves to third parties, mired in consumption, controlled by scarcity mindsets, and in that ultimately futile yet desperate search for what we've all been assured is our highest goal: happiness. I believe that's a lie, and even in my very short time looking into these topics, it's abundantly clear that there are credible, authoritative sources that point us in an entirely different direction. A direction that our highest achievement is in ascension in consciousness, with the goal of enlightenment. So I have to admit, I haven't done that much research on the topic of time before preparing for this episode, and certainly not in the context of it as a technique of mind control. But as it would happen yet again, just as I needed it, I came across something from Alan Watts that I thought was really profound. So first, some background on him. 1915 to 1973. Watts was an English writer, speaker, and self-styled philosophical entertainer, known for interpreting and popularizing Buddhist, Taoist, and Hindu philosophy for a Western audience. He gained a following while working as a volunteer programmer at the KPFA radio station in Berkeley. He wrote more than 25 books and articles on religion and philosophy, introducing the emerging hippie counterculture to The Way of Zen, 1957, one of the first best-selling books on Buddhism. In Psychotherapy East and West, he argued that Buddhism could be thought of as a form of psychotherapy. He considered Nature, Man, and Woman, 1958, to be, from a literary point of view, the best book I've ever written. He also explored human consciousness and psychedelics in works such as The New Alchemy and The Joyous Cosmology. His lectures found posthumous popularity through regular broadcasts on public radio, especially in California and New York, and more recently on the internet, on sites and apps such as YouTube and Spotify. The bulk of his recorded audio talks were recorded during the 1960s and early 1970s. So this is a collection of excerpts from The Lie We Live, Alan Watts on the Illusion of Time. I'll include a link in the description and would urge you to watch the entire thing, which is only 10 minutes. Again, it was very challenging picking the parts to include, but listen to how he frames time in a very intriguing way that I think is the way it plays out in most people's lives.
Now, I think one of the conventions by which we tend to be fooled more than almost any other is time. And for all human beings, time is a matter of extraordinary importance. And perhaps this is one of the principal ways in which we differ from animals. Because man has been called a time-binding animal. That is to say, a creature who is vividly aware of the fact that his life moves, as it were, along a line from the past through the present and into the future. Animals apparently live pretty much moment by moment. They don't appear to have very strong memories, but because man has a strong memory, he is able to bear the past in mind and, as it were, cast it forward into visions of the future based upon what has happened in the past. And therefore, although this facility gives man the most extraordinary ability to plan his life, to prepare for future eventualities, at the same time, there is a very heavy price which he pays for it, and especially if he takes this ability too seriously. In other words, if he doesn't realize that the true reality in which he lives is the present moment now. Buddha, one of the wisest of the sons of Asia, his real name was Gautama, but he was called Buddha because Buddha means the awakened one, the man who woke up. Now, in what sense was he awake? He was awake in the sense that he was completely all here. After all, we say about a person who's nuts, he's not all here. He's not all there. But our whole culture, our whole civilization, insofar as it is involved with time and living only for a future, is nuts. It's not all here. We are not awake. We are not completely alive now. And consequently, we are so hungry and so greedy because everything seems tasteless. We are living for an abstraction which has not yet come to be, and we don't know what really is.
It seems to me that time is the greatest assumed construct we have accepted and operate within. I mean, when is the last time you heard anyone talking about time conceptually and not as a commodity? People argue about all sorts of things, even taboo things sometimes, but it seems the science is settled on time. But is it possible that what we take as absurdly obvious, time, and is actually something or some things entirely different? That our present understanding of time has been so ground into us and done so successfully that we couldn't comprehend what it might be if it wasn't what we know it to be? But the idea that each man has a natural right to decide what are virtues and what are vices, that is, what contributes to that neighbor's happiness and what do not, and to punish him for all that do not contribute to it, is what no one ever had the impudence or folly to assert. It is only those who claim that government has some rightful power, which no individual or individuals ever did or could delegate to it, that claim that government has any rightful power to punish vices. It will do for a pope or a king who claims to have received direct authority from heaven to rule over his fellow men, to claim the right, as the vicegerent of God, to punish men for their vices. But it is a sheer and utter absurdity for any government, claiming to derive its powers wholly from the grant of the governed, to claim any such power, because everybody knows that the governed would never grant it. For them to grant it away would be an absurdity, because it would be granting away their own right to seek their own happiness, since to grant away their right to judge of what will be for their happiness is to grant away all their right to pursue their own happiness. Now, Let's get another perspective, and this one from Dr. Bruce Lipton. So here's some of the mainstream background you'll get on him. Lipton is an American writer and lecturer who advocates various pseudosciences, including vaccine misinformation. By his own admission, Lipton's ideas have not received attention from mainstream science. And it goes on to talk about his educational background, got a PhD in developmental biology. And on the subject of vaccine misinformation, I do want to point out that right here on the Wikipedia page for Bruce Lipton, it says, "These anti-vaccine viewpoints contradict the overwhelming scientific consensus, which firmly establishes the safety and effectiveness of vaccines in preventing various diseases." So, you're on notice. But don't forget.
Well, the word for it is propaganda when it's systematic. And that's really what we're dealing with on Wikipedia.
So you now feel that Wikipedia represents propaganda?
Well, I think all of the media does, but yes, I do.
Always remembering that everything you are presented with requires the combination of very special capacities that you have been granted by creation to evaluate what you're being presented with and come to conclusions for yourself. The combination of these capacities forms your sense of discernment, being the forces of things like intellect, experience, intuition, and others that allow you, not a perceived authority or anyone else, to make a determination of the veracity of information. All of this culminates in what I call probabilistic thinking, which is each of us engaging with information to conclude what we believe is probably the truth. And as full of errors as that process might be, it's far better than what most people do, which is outsource their thinking so that they don't have to do it at all. Okay, so let's put this into practice. I've given you what I'd call the popular bio. It was right from the Wikipedia page on Bruce Lipton. But what if we look into just one item and see if it might shed some different light? So Bruce Lipton has written several books. In fact, I think it's right at a dozen. But the most popular by far was, and is, Biology of Belief. So as you can see here, I did a little bit of research and found out that Biology of Belief has over 8,000 Amazon reviews. That's just Amazon, maybe there are reviews elsewhere. And they average 4.5 stars. And so I would offer that information in contrast to what we've heard from Wikipedia. And then I'd simply ask, who do you believe? So that was an incredibly prolonged intro to some very interesting observations Dr. Lipton has made about time. So let's take a look.
In the conventional world of Newtonian science, time and space were direct readouts, that time was a continuously moving process and that you're either at this time or you're at this time or you're at this time. When the world of quantum mechanics evolved, it started to recognize that time was actually just a conscious expression. That according to the world of quantum mechanics, there is no time. Everything is at the moment of now. The past, the present, and the future are all here right now. Because it really leaves open an understanding how we could go back and change the past. Or at the current moment, we can change the future. Because is this the current moment or not?
Marty, you're not thinking fourth-dimensionally.
All of a sudden it says, oh my goodness, the whole conventional world of everything was so ordered and regimented and understood seems to disappear in a quantum mechanical reality. Are you watching this now? Or did you watch this last year and just reviewing it now? Can't tell, can you? Well, the relevance is, welcome to the world of quantum weirdness. And yet it's so important because in that reality, it does say, yes, you can go back in the past and change the future. And all of a sudden it says, more creativity. We can do more than just follow our noses into the next minute. We can rewrite the whole story again and again and again.
And I don't think that result is accidental. We have been indoctrinated into a materialized and monetized conception of something we hardly understand and which has multiple and ancient explanations and traditions. So I'm going to leave it there, but take a few of Bertrand Russell's prophetic words with you. Diet, injections, and injunctions will combine from a very early age to produce the sort of character and the sort of beliefs that the authorities consider desirable. and any serious criticism of the powers that be will become psychologically impossible. So come see me next time as we count down the last 4 of the techniques of mind control, and we'll be going into number 11, the denial, hassle, ridicule factor. Until then, always remember to do your own thinking. Be well. To claim the right as the vice for them to grant it would be an absurdity, because it is impossible that a government should have any rights, except it is a natural impossibility to the totally just as I needed it, I came along something here. He was an English writer, speaker, and introduced his lectures found posthumous popularity. Lipton's ideas have not received attention from with regard to a supposed association between vaccine realized and monetized conception. So come see